Well, hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Sam. I am a student of the Bible. I'm a pastor and I'm a writer, and my training involves biblical studies, theology, and biblical languages. All right, we're at Genesis 10 today. So, Genesis 10 is what is called the Table of Nations, and what we're going to see here is Noah, his sons, and then all the different children, the male children, basically, that he had, and how that they kind of were supposed to spread out all over the earth and repopulate the earth. That was his last big thing that God said to Noah in chapter 9. As they exited the ark, he said, "Hey, I want you to repopulate the earth. This is a restart. I'm going to make my covenant with you." Rainbow. Then the whole thing with Noah and Ham went on. Cursed Canaan. We find out in 10 that Canaan is one of Ham's sons. And so here we go. This is Genesis chapter 10. Now, there's a few things I want to point out as we go through this passage. A couple things right off the bat. What's going on here? Are we really supposed to believe that from this small little family, the rest of the world, like 70 nations came from, and all this kind of stuff? I think what we have here is two things. I think we have an etiology story for how we got the nations, and how it kind of flows into this. We also have an etiology story for the nations that are found in Israel's history. Okay, and so we're going to see some of these names and go, oh, these sound like these people and these people. And it's kind of like, well, this is where this one came from. This is where this one came from. This is where this one came from. Kind of a way to kind of frame this story. The other thing that we're going to see here is we're going to see in the middle of this, we're going to see a name pop up. And that name is going to be really important because it actually, there is a division of thought and interpretation on what is going on here. And we're going to run with two different interpretations. And they're both kind of no real, like, this is the exact one. It's like some people go on this side. I looked up probably 6 or 7 different articles, and within academia, within just scholarly articles on what scholars think is going on here, and both sides of the confessional and critical aisle. And it's really difficult to kind of figure out exactly what is meant when we talk about this guy Peleg, and what it means that the earth was divided in his time. So we'll get to that. But I'm going to read out of my CSB. I'm nearing the end of the journey of doing a deep dive on this. And so I actually read through this earlier, looked through the Hebrew. We'll point out a couple of Hebrew words here and there. But this is not a way far departure from any of the other translations. So anyway, here it is, Genesis chapter 10. It says, "These are the family records of Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. They also had sons after the flood. Japheth's sons, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. Gomer's sons, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Torgama. And Javan's sons, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. From these descendants, the peoples of the coasts and islands spread out into their lands according to their clans and their nations, each with its own language." And so that's Japheth's sons. And they're the coastal people, right? And so that's how they want to describe, what's going on there. Verse 6, Ham's sons, Cush, Mizraim, Put, Canaan. Cush's sons were Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Ramah, and Sabteka. And Ramah's sons were Sheba and Dedan. Cush fathered Nimrod, who began to be powerful in the land. He was a powerful hunter in the sight of the Lord. That's why it said, like Nimrod, a powerful hunter in the sight of the Lord. His kingdom started, this is important, his kingdom started with Babylon, Erech, and Akkad, or Acadia, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. So this says Babylon, where I'm pretty sure, let me look up what is actually in the Hebrew here, because I want to say it doesn't say Babylon. No. So Babylon is like implied, but in the Hebrew, it is the word Babel, which is where we get the Tower of Babel from in that story. So it says from his kingdom started with Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From that land he went to Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Ir Calah, and Rezem between Nineveh and the great city Calah. I don't think this is exactly what it says either. If you go to verse 12 in Hebrew, it says, between Nineveh and Calah, that is the city great. The question that needs to be on our mind is that as we read here is like, who's writing all of this? And how are all of these known? How do they know Nineveh and all this stuff? Like, none of that is really around here. And so this is another thing that tips off people to go, well, this is definitely written, or at least edited, way later. Now, if you got a single author written earlier, they're definitely edited over time, multiple times, and this definitely is edited later. And that's a little tip-off to that. You see in other versions of this, it's you kind of get this idea that Nineveh and Calah and these two different things, but this is the great city that's talked about. Like, well, how would someone know about the great city here? Well, it's because this was written at a later time, or edited in at a later time. Just kind of like a little, note there. So let's keep going. Mizraim, the father of the people of Lud, Anam, Lehab, Naphtu, Pathros, Kasula, the Philistines came from them. After Canaan fathered Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, as well as the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Girgashites, the Hivites, the Arkites, the Sinites, and the Arvadites, the Zemarites, and the Hamathites. Afterward, the Canaanite clans scattered. The Canaanite border went from Sidon going toward Gerar as far as Gaza, and going down towards Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim as far as Lasha. These are Ham's sons by their clans, according to their languages, in their lands and their nations. Okay, and Shem, Japheth's older brother, also had sons. Shem was the father of all the sons of Eber. That's a name that's going to be important. Okay, and there's a reason why that's pointed out here. He's the great grandfather of Eber or Eber. The reason that the son was the father, Shem was the father of all the sons of Eber, is important. Is because this is likely the root for where we get the word Hebrews from. It should be noted that there's a lot of people in here who weren't exactly the Hebrew people, but maybe that kind of term was over the whole group of people, and then specifically the Israelites kind of took that name and ran with it kind of at some point. But there's a map that is in the New Oxford Annotated Bible. I want to show you right here. It kind of shows you how this is all delineated. So here's the map, and notice you got Ham's children off here in Africa, in that area. You've got Japheth in the north, and then you have Shem and all those people here in the Arabian Peninsula. So that's kind of how this lays out this whole thing. But Eber is important because Eber is likely where we get Hebrew from. So it says this: Shem's sons were Elam, Ashur, Arpachshad, Lud, and Aram. Aram's sons Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mash. Arpachshad fathered Shelah, and Shelah fathered Eber. Eber had two sons. One was named Peleg. Okay, for during his days, the earth was divided. Peleg means division. Okay, during his days, the earth was divided. That word earth there is the word eretz, which was the same word you find in Genesis 1:1 when it says, when God began to create the heavens, the Hashemayim, and the earth, the eretz. So that's the same word there. Divided the earth. The earth was divided. His brother was named Joktan. And Joktan fathered Almadad, Shalef, all these other names. So I got to the point where I wanted to get to, okay? And then it just says these are the clans at the very end. All these other names, they're important, but I don't want this video to go for an hour. So these are Shem's sons by their clans according to their languages and their lands and their nations. This is Shem's sons. This is where we get the Semitic people from, the Shemites or the Semites. And this is where Israel is going to come from. Okay, and we're going to find that out through the line. You'll see this. These are the clans of Noah's sons according to their family records in their nations. The nations on earth spread out from these after the flood is what the Genesis wants to tell us about the history. So a couple things here that I want to kind of point out real quick. We already talked about that this is probably an etiology for the nations that we find within the pages of Israel's scriptures and Israel's history, okay? And they're going to be defined by how they define them. So what I really want to talk about is this Peleg and his name and what happened there when it says that the Eretz was divided, or that the earth was divided in his time. Now, there are people who would say that what this is talking about is when the actual physical ground, the land, the earth, was actually divided. And so the thought process, I think, was that, that at one point in time the earth was all together, like this Pangea thing. And then during Peleg's time, the earth separated and divided, and the oceans went here and there and everywhere, and then finally it's kind of resting where it is at today. And there's people who have written like whole entire papers on this thing, and they went in on, they talked about the science and all this stuff. It felt like a lot to me. Just gonna be honest here. To me, it felt like a lot of like tying this loose end to this loose end to this loose end to this over here to try to figure out what was going on. When I think there might be a little bit easier of an explanation for what this is. So I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think the scholarly consensus is that this is not about the dividing of the land itself, but the dividing lines of the land between the peoples and the nations. And that's why you have these nation groups that are coming from these three sons. And now the nations are being divided during Peleg's time, which is going to lead to chapter 11 when we talk about the story of the Tower of Babel, or of Babel. And so what we see here is these 70 nations going out. And then what they're saying is, well, that at the time of this story of the Tower of Babel, they were all together, not spreading out like they were supposed to be, and they were building this tower for themselves, which we'll get to that story when we get to 11. But then God says, well, we can't have this. If they can accomplish this, they can accomplish whatever it is they want to. And so let us go down and confuse their languages. We'll get to the story next video. I'm jumping ahead. It's really hard to not, because I think this is like chapter 11 actually is the story of how this all kind of plays out. And so the dividing of these nations then happens during this time period of, we're trying to say, like during Peleg's time, the nations are all divided up. Well, what happens here? Well, I think Deuteronomy 32 is a clue into what happened. Like Moses, or as he's singing, is telling this song, teaching this story, he says, ask your fathers fathers what happened. And they'll tell you at the time when El divided the nations, he divided them amongst all of the sons of, it says sons of Israel in some of the Bibles, but we know from the Dead Sea Scrolls and others, it says the B'nai Elohim, the sons of God. And so this is maybe kind of a story of how the nations got their patron deities and all this kind of stuff from these. And then, the heavenly host kind of got spread out, and each nation had something that was supposed to be in charge of them, kind of a deal. And so where does that come from? Well, it comes from not only this story here of these 70 nations and the dividing lines were cut in Deuteronomy 32, but as you go in and you read Canaanite mythology, what you find out is that with the Canaanite pantheon and all that kind of stuff, there are 70 different gods within this pantheon that get put over different parts of the nation and over different people groups. And so there could be all of this in the mix, and so that's what scholars are coming to are coming into consensus about lately is that I think, or maybe even it's been a while, but that this is not about the dividing of actual, physical land, but this is about the dividing of the nations and the apportioning of those nations to the Bnei Elohim. And then it says, Israel became Yahweh's portion. And that was the one that Yahweh said, I'm taking Israel. They're mine. They're my people. And that's what we see from the rest of the story after chapter 11 all the way on. One of the sons of all these people is Abram, and he's in a land that is different, and Yahweh kind of pulls him towards the right land. And you're going to go over here, and I'm going to take you that way. And then all of a sudden, from Abram, he's going to bless him, and then these people called the Israelites come. So that's kind of how I see it, one of the things going on here. I don't think it's actually the Pangea is divided, and then water comes between it. Now we have the continents the way they are. Do I think that probably happened? I think scientifically that's probable, but I'm not sure that's what that's talking about there. So anyway, I would love to, I know there's a lot in this and a lot of unknown and a lot of trying to figure out what's going on here. But what we do know is that this sets up the story to be told about the Tower of Babel, which sets up the rest of the story of the nation of Israel and their roots, where they came from, all that kind of stuff. So thanks for hanging out with me today. That's Genesis chapter 10. The next video on Genesis will be 11 on the Tower of Babel, and we'll dive into that a little deeper, what's going on there. And then we'll be done with this, with the beginnings of the origin story of the people of Israel and of the book of Genesis. So thanks, like I said, thanks for hanging out with me today. Give me a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.